Y'all loved the tallow balm video that I shared, and you had a lot of great questions. So in this video, we're going to answer those. We're going to whip up a simple batch together, and we're going to cover some of the common issues that can come up, and I want to show you how you can customize your own tallow balm for your specific skin type. This is kind of a part 2 video. In the first video, I showed you all my personal tallow balm recipe, and oh my gosh, I did not expect to get such a response from that video, and I thank you all so much. And if you missed that video and you're new here, my name's Loanna. I'm a licensed esthetician, and I want to show you how you can easily make a super simple face balm so you can feel real confident making your own balm that is customized specifically for you, whether you're sensitive, oily, mature, and feel comfortable doing it yourself. You can do it. Today, I'm going to give you the recipe for a good base recipe that's just 2 ingredients, and then go over how you can build on that, what's safe, what's not, one that suits just you. Now, once we get that base right, we're going to cover some of the common issues. Some of you mentioned that your texture of your balm was grainy. I'm going to show you how to fix that and how to not have that happen in the first place, and we're going to whip some up too. First, I'm going to go over for the small batch all the tools and ingredients you'll need. You're going to need a digital thermometer or some sort of thermometer. Very, very important. You're going to need a measuring cup. In this batch, we're using 1/4 of a cup, and we're going to need a tablespoon measurement. I'm using a double boiler. This one is a little chocolate maker, and you could also use just a pan. Here I put a Pyrex container in it, and you could also use a metal or glass bowl on top, and I'll link other videos that I've used that method in before. You're going to need your oils, just your basic oils. For starters, I would recommend your apricot kernel oil or a good jojoba oil. And you're going to need a mixer and a glass or metal bowl. Oh, and your tallow. Start with the small batch recipe, and we're going to need 1/4 of a cup of the tallow, and if you were using the Pyrex container, you could put it directly into the Pyrex container and then add a little as it melts until you had the 1/4 of a cup. And we are going to let the tallow melt till it is around 160 degrees. We're going to stir it frequently. The problem with the graininess is that if you do not get it up to around 156 to 165 degrees, the fatty acids don't dissolve properly, so we want to get those good and dissolved and stir it frequently. Then we are going to turn the temperature down or even remove it from the heat if you have it in the double broiler, and we're going to let that temperature of the oil come down a little bit because your oils require a lower temperature, because if you put them in too hot, the heat will destroy all the good qualities of the oils that we're wanting to keep for our skin. I'm using the apricot kernel oil, so I want to get this temperature down to 100 degrees. And we're going to make sure that it's cooled down to that, and I'm going to stir it a lot while we're letting it cool. And then when it gets down to that temperature, that's when I'm going to add the oils of my choice. And the temperatures that you can keep these around to make sure most of these oils are good is anywhere between 95 to 120 degrees, but I try to keep it around 100. That should be safe. And you can see here that the oil was a little bit cooler than the melted tallow, and that's why we're stirring it really well. We're going to stir, stir, stir. We want it really well incorporated. And at this point is where you would add your essential oils, but we will cover that later. Right now for the base recipe, that was 1/4 cup of your tallow and 2 tablespoons total of the oil of your choice. You could customize it here, 1 tablespoon of one oil and 1 tablespoon of another. But I'll talk about that in a minute. I'm getting ahead of myself. And here I've already poured it into the bowl that I'm going to whip it up in. And you can see it's already, the temperature of the bowl's already ready, cooling that down. So I'm going to get this in the refrigerator. Part of the method to keep it from getting grainy and gritty is cooling it down quickly. So we're going to place this in the refrigerator and check on it multiple times. Now you can see it's set up pretty good, and I'm going to go ahead and whip it at this point. Sometimes you can stir it throughout the cooling process, but I didn't, and it's ready. So we're going to whip it. And remember, this is just a small batch. Once you get it tweaked, and we'll talk about that here in just a second, but once you get that tweaked, you can make as much of it as you think you'll need in one batch. And it's simple batch. Turned out nice. Now let's go learn how to customize it just for you. In a minute, we are going to talk about honey and how adding it to your balm may not work out like you think it will. Now, I know it's really fun to customize and we want to try all the things, but let's talk about a few things before we just throw it all in one lotion. Let me show you how to do it safely and what things can target your specific concerns. I want to start with a few base oils that I like to use. There are so many out there, but these are my go-tos. First off is apricot kernel oil. It is great for normal to dry skin and mature skin, and it absorbs easily. It's rich in antioxidants, vitamin A and E, and it helps neutralize UV damage. It's soothing, it's moisturizing, and it improves skin elasticity. Next is castor oil. This one's deeply moisturizing. It's full of fatty acids. It helps with cell turnover rate. It's great for anti-aging and hyperpigmentation and dark circles. Now, jojoba oil, it protects the skin barrier. It has vitamins B and E, and it also has natural antibiotic properties, which makes it possibly good for acne-prone skin. It's good for normal and oily skin as well, and it also holds up well to heat, which makes it good for the infused oils. Now, what are infused oils? They are the carrier oils, and you infuse them with dried herbs and flowers like calendula, comfrey, elderflower, frankincense resin. Got a video coming up on that, so keep an eye out for that. And you can gently infuse them by heating them up, or you can let them sit in these oils for like 4 to 6 weeks. So keep in mind, castor oil doesn't like heat, so it is best to infuse that the slow way. Next are seed oils. They're cold pressed from seeds like raspberry seed oil, cranberry seed oils, and these are true powerhouses. They're packed with antioxidants, vitamin C, tons of anti-aging benefits, and they are excellent additions to skincare. Now let's talk essential oils. I like to use them sparingly. Just 2 to 3 drops is enough. Some of my favorites are frankincense, helichrysum, I know I'm not saying that right, geranium, and rose. There are lots of amazing essential oils, but these are some great ones to start with. Some ways to customize this is if you're dealing with the hyperpigmentation or dark spots. These are some great options. These are all great for anti-aging concerns. And vitamin C, also great for anti-aging and excellent for your skin. Now, if you have acne-prone skin, here's a few recommendations, but I'm sorry guys, y'all have it tough. Now let's talk about how to customize this. At this point, you're going to be adding the oils, and this is where you can start bringing in your infused oils and your seed oils. This is where you're going to customize it. I recommend you start with just 1 to 2 additions so you can really see how your skin responds. For example, you could use 1 tablespoon of the calendula infused jojoba oil, or you could just use the plain jojoba oil or the apricot kernel seed oil. And you could add a tablespoon of the raspberry seed oil. And you could also add a few drops of essential oil at this time if you want. And of course, castor oil. You can't forget that. It is lovely. Any combination as long as you have 2 tablespoons of oil and 1/4 cup of tallow. Remember, these are oils that I have already infused, and I have some other videos that show you how to do that. But you can also purchase some of these infused oils, and I will link those in the description. There's so many different ways you can do it. Just use your imagination, but remember, start slow, customized based on your skin type. The goal is to learn how your skin reacts to this simple base, and then from there you can build on that. Just don't overload it right away with new ingredients. Go low and slow so you can tell if anything's causing a reaction. Remember, only you know your body. If you are trying something new, make sure it is just right for you. Make sure you don't have any allergies or sensitivities when you're trying something new. Now let's talk about the don'ts. You do not want to add anything with moisture, nothing with a water content. Adding moisture to your oils can lead to bacteria and mold growth, and you definitely do not want to do that. And I'll explain that a little more, and we'll also talk about adding honey to your balm in just a minute. But first, let's talk about adding something called arrowroot powder. Arrowroot is natural. It comes from a root of a plant, and it's used as a thickener in cooking, and it is great for helping to reduce that greasy feel, and it's also great for sensitive skin and all skin types. You can use anywhere from 1 to 5 tablespoons depending on the size of your batch. I started with 2 tablespoons, and then I decided, oops, better add a little more. And it did give it a little smoother texture. You can experiment with that, use less or more to see how you like it personally. And actually, you don't even have to whip it at all. I like to just pour it into my jar, let it solidify, and use it. Now, everybody's favorite question, can I add honey to my tallow balm? You can, but there's some important things to know first. One of the biggest problems that people run into is that their balm won't whip properly or it starts to separate. And that's usually because honey contains moisture. And as I mentioned earlier, adding moisture to oils can introduce bacteria or even mold, especially if there's no preservatives. That's why I prefer to use honey in other ways, not directly in my balm. But if you absolutely want to give it a try, here's what you need to know. If you're adding honey to the tallow, you're going to need both an emulsifier and a preservative. So you can use beeswax as your emulsifier. You're going to melt a small amount of beeswax in with your tallow until it's completely melted, and then you're going to let it to cool down. You want it to get below the temperature like we talked earlier about damaging the oil. You also don't want it to be too hot so that it doesn't damage the honey. You want to keep it to around 95 degrees at the cool down point before you add your honey. Now at that point you can add some oil and a little bit of honey, and then you let it cool like we showed earlier and process it and whip it in exactly the same way. I'm not going to whip up a batch with the honey, but just keep in mind you can do that. And if you use the beeswax as the emulsifier, like I said, and you make a really small batch that you think you could use up in a week, or store it in the refrigerator, and then you can get out small batches and use it up through the week, and then just replenish your little weekly jar. So with all that being said, that's why I recommend starting out with the simpler base. That way, if something's not working for you, you've not wasted all that time and your product, and then you don't have to throw it away. Rub some on your feet at night, throw some socks on. Be nice. I've been working on a tallow-based sunscreen and a non-tallow-based tallow-based sunscreen. And if you haven't yet, hit like them and subscribe. Hit like and subscribe so you'll know when that's coming out. Thank y'all so much for hanging out with me. My name's Loanna, and this is Little Bit of Homestead. Oh, donkey. Slurpy, slurpy.